All right, so today we're going to be talking about the difference between closed team sheet and open team sheet. So this is coming from the perspective of a very casual player. I started playing competitive Mons off and on since like 2014-ish, although it was mainly singles. And with Scarlet and Violet, I've actually migrated over to VGC, and I feel like I have an interesting perspective as somebody who's, I've been around Pokemon since the 90s. I've dabbled in competitive, and I think I speak for, the very average person who was not able to actually make that jump into competitive, what barriers I had along the way. And also, I think I'm a pretty good example of why Scarlet and Violet has exploded in popularity in the competitive scene. So I wanted to just give my takes because I've been seeing a lot of discourse on Twitter about whether or not open team sheets should stay or if closed team sheets the way to go, which one's healthier for the game. So I just want to throw my 2 cents out. So I guess let's just start with the difference between closed team sheets and open sheets for anybody who doesn't know. Basically, closed team sheet, you don't see anything except the 6 Pokemon there your opponent's bringing. But with open team sheet, you see everything. So you see items, you see attacks, you see abilities. You just don't see EVs, IVs, and natures. Let's talk about closed team sheet first because that's where the game started, right? Like for the longest time, Pokemon was closed team sheet. Even in the very, very beginning, I think there was even a format where you didn't even know what your opponent was going to bring. Like you didn't even know what 6 they had. And then eventually they added a team preview. And then eventually they added, they went from best of 1 to best of 3. So, there's been improvements over the course of Pokemon history to make it more accessible to new players. But I feel like Scarlet and Violet was like the first time that, or actually I take that back. I feel like Sword and Shield was probably the first time that like anybody could get into Pokemon, especially with the rental teams. But in terms of closed team sheet and open team sheet, the first time open team sheet was ever given was Scarlet and Violet, and we've also seen a huge boom in popularity with the game as well. And I don't think that open team sheets is like 100% of the reason why, but I think that is a large reason why. So let's just talk about it. So what are the pros of closed team sheets? Well, the pros are you could play really wacky strategies and nobody knows what you're doing. You could play like weird explosion, or you could play some weird tech that nobody knew about. And it's fun. It's wacky. I think that's what Pokemon is all about. And I think it's important to remember like the roots of the game. There's a lot of things that you could hide, information that your opponent doesn't know. And I think that there's a certain skill set that comes with that. And I think there's, we still have some, I just want to back up for a second. We still do have some closed team sheet best of 1 scenarios that people play even today. Japan, that's their circuit, although I think it's best of 3 closed team sheet. But we also have the Grand Challenge, which is best of 1 closed team sheet, on the Switch. If you want to play the in-game Switch ladder, it's also best of 1 closed team sheet. So it's definitely a format that still exists, although for anybody outside of Japan, you're mostly playing best of 3 open team sheet in any sort of non-ladder scenario. So it's important to still have these skills. I don't want to say that it's not important, but if you're actually competing in the circuit, you're not really playing closed team sheet as much. Going back to what the pros are, I think it rewards people that know a lot about the game. Unfortunately, I think it makes it extremely inaccessible to anybody that doesn't devote their life to Pokemon. There's something to be said about the fun of like running into this random strategy you never thought of or that you weren't considering. But I think, unfortunately, at a certain point, it actually just rewards more creative team building than it does rewarding the better player. I think, especially in a best of 1 scenario, the better player doesn't always win because Pokemon, I could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with this, right? But Pokemon doesn't necessarily have, how do I word this? Pokemon just has a lot of RNG involved with it. And I'm not trying to say that as like, I lose my battles because of RNG. I lose my battles because I put my Pokemon in situations where RNG could become the outcome of the match, right? That's why you see Wolf Glick winning so many regionals. You see consistent top players doing consistently well. But no matter how well they play, they're still going to run into some things that are completely out of their control. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think with a closed team sheet, unfortunately, you run into too many of those. Like that random RNG has no room to adjust itself. So, like, for example, with an open team sheet and you're playing over the series of a best of 3, or even closed team sheet for that matter, actually, if you're playing over best of 3, there's a skill set to being able to read your opponent, try to figure out what moveset is on your opponent's team, depending on the other mons on their team, right? Trying to read what you think your opponent's trying to set up or what they want to do with certain Pokemon. That's its own skill set. But unfortunately, I just don't think that even though I think it's in the spirit of Pokemon, I don't think it's the most competitive side of it. So when they swapped over to open team sheets in Scarlet and Violet, I feel like you really started seeing a lot more consistent results from people. You really started seeing just a healthier metagame, and there was less of that like cheeky, like, oh, I'm just gonna do this like really cheeky strategy and just win a game off a top player for no reason, right? And you started seeing like actual team building and a lot of I don't even want to say like centralization, because I do feel like the metagame's actually pretty healthy right now, although I guess one could argue it's probably due to Terra. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the like open team sheet allows for more consistent results and better players to show their level of skill over the course of best of 3 better than closed team sheet best of 3. Although now that I'm saying that, I'm kind of backtracking that, because I also feel like the better player over a best of 3 and closed team sheet would also probably win. I don't know. That's kind of tough. Maybe I'm not qualified to answer that, but that being said, I still think that open team sheet's the better way, because it helps newer players to get in. Like, it lowers the skill floor a little bit, but I do think it also raises the skill ceiling, because you kind of have this situation where like better players will read somebody's team sheet better than a newer player, but it gives newer players the ability to somewhat compete with an older player, a better player, right? So like, for example, I'm not very good. The highest I ever made it to was, I think, maybe Ultra Ball on closed team sheet ladder. And in a tournament, I usually, if I get one win, I consider that a win. I usually lose like 90% of my matches. Although, to be fair, in the New York area, we have some of the best players in the world. So it's kind of hard when I show up and like it's Brendan Zhang, Tom Hayden, Jacob Mortensen, Joe Ugarte, right? Like they're all Tim Edwards. Like I've had to play against Tim. It's like, I'm not winning those. But I also think that's fine, because again, that's what we should be rewarding, right? We should be rewarding better players. Although I will say, with open team sheets, even though I kind of have the realistic part of me that's like, listen, I'm probably not going to beat Tim Edwards, but there is a part of me that's like, with me having the open team sheet, there's no surprises. So if I'm beaten, it's either because A, I suck, or B, maybe they're just a direct team counter to what I'm trying to do. So I still feel like there is a small part of me that could potentially win, and that it's not just an automatic loss, because I have no idea what Tim's playing. So like, for example, I went to one of the cups near me that was, I think it was right before EUIC, I think. I don't remember. And I sat down, it was me, it was Anthony RX Painkiller RX, it was Tim Edwards, and Brian, who's in our scene. He's the Ho-Oh player you guys have seen. And I sat down and I'm like, all right, listen, I'm probably not going to win anything, but let's just go into it with an open mind. And game 1 against him, I held my own. I lost, but I held my own. And I felt like if I didn't have open team sheet there, I would have just gotten destroyed. But I knew what to lead. I knew what surprises there were. And I kind of got into the habit of like, listen, don't give up until the match is over. You see his options, consider the options better than he can consider him. And I ended up losing, but I never felt like it was out of my realm of possibilities to even just get a game off of him. So I think that's like what's important about the open team sheets, is that possibility for the worst player is still there, just not in a gimmicky way, I guess. Because like with a closed team sheet, it's like, all right, I could be running this like totally random set that nobody could account for. Because the thing with Pokemon is that there's an infinite amount of ways that you can build a Pokemon, whether it be the nature or the EVs. I mean, even just the movesets, the items, right? Like, you can't possibly account for everything, and that's okay. Like, the way you're supposed to team build, the way that things are rewarded in this game is that you build for the masses. You want to have as many positive or at least neutral matchups as you can. And then with that, plus your skill level will bring you to victory. But yeah, I think that's something that you just lose with going back to closed team sheets. So, I think it's important for Pokemon and TPCI. They're clearly trying to make this an esport. Like, they're clearly trying to bring this forward and grow the scene, which I think is amazing. Champions has the potential to really balloon this game to levels that no one has ever seen before. I think part of that is going to live or die by what they do with the competitive scene, though, in terms of closed team sheets versus open team sheets. Because we also have to remember, part of the reason why they went to open team sheets was because of Terra, right? Because Terra was just adding a whole nother layer of things you just couldn't predict. And it was just adding a whole nother layer of that gimmick, of that like random Terra, like just so happens to counter your perfect strategy. At least now you can see what options your opponent has, and there's no real surprises. And I think, and one more thing I just want to add, with open team sheets, you still have to remember your calcs and still figure out like what natures and EVs your opponent has to an extent so that you know how to play into it. So that thing about closed team sheets I said earlier about, rewarding people who can actually like analyze your opponent's team without being given all the information, that is still highly rewarded with very important things like natures and EVs. So that skill set's still, present in the game. I think going into Gen 10, going into Champions, they need to do two things. They need to make open team sheets just the new normal. Do not go back to closed team sheets. Now that you've had it for the last 4 years and it's been positively received for the most part, you need to just keep it. And it's so good that I actually think you need to find a way to put it on the cart. Now, I know that one's a little bit more of a heated topic because I know that on cart, a lot of people just play it to, I don't know, just have fun, right? You're just playing it. You're not really practicing for a tournament. If you're practicing for a tournament, you're going on Showdown. But I think that it's important to kind of bridge that gap a little bit between what people are playing on cart and what real life competitions are like. Because, for the longest time, what was on cart, that's what the competitions were. Maybe the format was a little different because that's old school stuff. But I mean, if you were playing closed team sheet in a tournament, you were also playing closed team sheet on ladder because that's just how it was. I don't think Scarlet and Violet was necessarily built with the idea of like, oh, we're going to be making it big in esports. I think they just built it. TPCI looked at it and said, we should add open team sheets because Terras are going to be a mess. And they're too easily changed, which we'll get into in a second. And then now the scene has just exploded and loved that change, right? So now I think you need to continue that trend. The other reason why open team sheets were put into the game, which I never experienced because I didn't play back then, but from what I've been reading online, it seems like a lot of people were kind of sharing secrets amongst their friends. So like, let's just say somebody played Wolf Glick round 1 and they said, hey, Wolf has a life orb Scizor and it hits, it kill, and one hit shots this and that and whatever. Here are the calcs. And then their friend plays Wolf Glick round 2. Now, Wolf is going in with a disadvantage because his opponent already knows his team, right? Already knows the secret sauce. So now Wolf's at a disadvantage. And it also works the opposite way. I mean, these top players probably have people feeding them information about the team, right? About their opponents. And then when things start getting down to the wire of the top 8, some people know other people's teams while they don't. So this equals the leveling field, right? Where this information game is now equal. Everybody has the same information for the most part. I mean, you can't stop people from doing the nature EV thing, fine, but that's so minimal in comparison to knowing movesets and items and abilities and terras. And then the other thing too is the combat cheating, right? Like, if you knew that Wolf's strategy was using Miraidon, you could just throw a Terra Ground on your main Pokemon and he would never know, right? Because there was close team sheet. And then you just counter his, and then for the next match after that, oh, actually I gotta go grass for Spore. Then you just change it to grass. And who's gonna know? This combats cheating, this combats all that information, like weirdness, and it just makes the game more competitive. Like I said earlier too, playing an open team sheet best of 3 more consistently rewards the better player than a best of 1 closed team sheet, in my opinion. So that's why I think that they should try to find a way to put this into Champions. It's tricky because, I understand the sentiment of you boot up a game on ladder and you're sitting on your couch and you want to play Pokemon, but you don't want to try hard too much. Let me just boot up a closed team sheet. But it's like, I feel like if TPCI and Game Freak really want to push Pokemon to that next level, there needs to be a form of a ladder or something that has, even if it's not best of 3, because you want people to just be able to queue up for a quick game and be done with it, you need to at least have open team sheets. At least show the items. I mean, that's a start. If you really don't want to show all the abilities, or like you just can't show all the abilities, fine, it is what it is. But I just feel like at the very least, just show items, because I think it's important to know who's sashed, who's specs, and I think it helps a lot with just the ladder being fun, especially with low ladder too. I mean, I don't know how it is in Master Ball because I've never hit it, but I gotta tell you, like, the amount of like random gimmicky stuff I see down in like Pokeball and Great Ball makes it like so hard to want to push on that ladder. Like, I do feel like if I tried, I probably could hit Ultra Ball or Master Ball. I don't think it's that hard, but I have to go through so much, like, random stuff that I've never seen before, and then I just lose to this random strategy, and I'm like, oh, all right, cool. That was fun. I wish I just saw the item so I knew what the strategy was and I could play around it and, like, be the better player. So, I feel like if you want to do that, you just have... You make the casual ladder just, like, full closed team sheet, and then you make the ranked ladder at least partially open team sheet. I don't know what gimmicks they're going to do, but if they're going to have, like, a rotating gimmick, whether it be Mega or Z-Move or whatever it is, you need to show that as well. Terra, especially. Like, the fact that I can't see what Terra people are in Team Preview is absolutely insane. The only other thing I could think of is that they don't want to have it so that it rewards whoever writes down more information. So, like let me explain. So, if you're playing on console, right, most likely you're playing it just to, like, casually play. And I feel like, again, if you're trying to play hardcore, you're going to be on Showdown. Then forcing somebody to then write down an entire sheet of notes for, like, one best of one every single time they play on cart, like, starts to feel like a chore. So maybe they're trying to limit that by not giving you all the information so that you don't have to. I mean, one thing I've learned by playing WoW all these years is if there is a chance that somebody could get better at a game, they will take it and they will force themselves to do it, and then they will burn themselves out because they think that they have to do it. Or maybe they do have to do it, and then they'll just burn themselves out and then they just won't play anymore. Champions as an app is catered towards the esports scene. So to me, Champions should include a best of 3 format, and it should include open team sheets, because that's basically going to be the new Showdown. That's going to hopefully be the practice tool that people are going to use, and you're marketing it that way. At least, like, again, I hate the closed team sheet on ladder with no information, but I understand why it is the way it is, because, like, that's just marketed as a kid's game, and then there's a subset of people that are making it more competitive. I don't know if this is hopium, I don't know if this is copium, I don't know what this is, but I would like to see and or think we will see that kind of change being made in Champions. Those are just my thoughts on open team sheet versus closed team sheet. Let me know what you guys think. If you liked it, obviously leave a like. But I love doing these discussion videos, just kind of turning the camera on and ranting. So if you enjoy it, let me know. And we'll definitely be doing more because I have a lot of things I want to talk about towards the end of Scarlet and Violet going into the next generation. And leave a comment below, too. I want to hear what you guys think about this, because I've been seeing some discourse on Twitter, and I want to know if I'm alone or if this is just my opinion because I'm casual. I would like to hear from some more competitive people. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.